I'm Reisigo, and I'm attempting to complete every single GameCube game, but I'm randomizing what game I'm playing next. In this episode, we're controlling some beloved Nicktoon characters as they assemble to save Volcano Island in Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island. So let's see how Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island is in 2024. Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island was released on October 24th, 2006, and was developed by Blue Tongue Entertainment and published by THQ. Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island is an action-adventure video game and is a sequel to Nicktoons Unite, which we already played and covered, so go check that video out if you haven't already. I'll put the link in the description. We're going to go through the story mode of this game to consider this one complete for the challenge. Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island opens up with a bunch of story early, and it ends up being most of the story we get for the entirety of the game. So I'm just going to cover all of what they tell us here, and then we can talk about the gameplay for this game. The opening cutscene shows us a trio of crabs led by no other than Wise Old Crab as they gather around Summoner's Rock. They're there in an effort to summon the 9 heroes so they can defeat their mortal enemy, Magu. During the ceremony, Magu breaks the circle of summoning, causing the 9 heroes to become scattered across the island. The only 2 heroes that ended up being summoned to the correct place are Danny Phantom and SpongeBob SquarePants. These 2 will be our first 2 playable characters in this game. The Wise Old Crab tells them that they summoned the heroes to the island because Magu escaped from his prison, and now he's seeking vengeance against them and the island. Apparently, Magu has made some ooze that corrupts anything and everything that touches it. The Wise Old Crab tells us that legend says that the Chosen Ones, or us, will be able to rescue everyone and defeat Magu, and then he sends us off so that we can begin our task. That's all the story we're really gonna get for a while, but when we get more, I'll talk about it then. Anyways, once the cutscene ends, we can explore Summoner's Rock for the first level of the game and the tutorial. I'm not going to focus too heavy on the levels in this game because most of them take a while to complete, and a lot of them are the same, if not similar, during the whole thing, so we're just going to talk about them for a minute, talk about anything important, and then move on. But before all that, we need to talk about the gameplay for the game. As I mentioned before, this is an action-adventure game, but the gameplay is more of a mix of a beat-em-up and a platformer. We have to move from left to right usually, and then we fight, jump, and collect our way through each level. When playing through each level, there isn't much going on in the way of the screen. Just a picture of the character we're using, in this case it's Danny Phantom, and a little meter to the right of his picture. So this is going to be easy to explain. The green behind the picture indicates our current health, green being great, yellow being somewhere in the middle, and red being low and that we need to be careful or we'll have to restart the level. The meter on the right hand side is our special meter, and this will fill up as we defeat enemies and collect pickups off the ground. This is the first level and we haven't unlocked it yet, so I'll show more of that later on. In this game, we can basically hit any object in the area and they'll drop collectibles. There are a bunch of them, but we need specific ones to level up our characters so that we can get alternate costumes for them. So it's more of just if you want to and not a need to. It doesn't make the character any better or worse. Once we finish this first little area, we get another cutscene where we find Patrick Star jumping up and down on a diving board. He's one of the Chosen Ones, which SpongeBob informs him, and then we start walking away, but Patrick doesn't stop what he's doing until SpongeBob tells him to come on. This leads to the next level of the game, and we got our third character. Now we can head to Shipwreck Cliff, the first true level of the game, and I actually like this one. There are old ships that have merged with the walls, so we have to use them as we climb and scale our way to the top of the area from the beach below. Let's talk about the controls for a second before we start jumping and fighting through the levels. Controls are very simple. We move with the analog stick, we jump with the A button, do normal punches and kicks with the B button. When we have points in our meter, we can use our special attack with the X button, which also picks up and throws items that we may need later. Y lets us interact with things, the R button switches our character, and that's basically it. It's a very simple control scheme for a kid's game, so there's nothing fancy here. As you can see here with Danny Phantom's special, we can shoot plasma balls at enemies to take them down nice and easy. You might have noticed that when we take an enemy down, they drop yellow or green orbs. The green orbs restore our health, and the yellow orbs add to our special meter. I think that basically covers the gameplay for this game. It's very simple, and we're going to do a lot of platforming collecting and beating up creatures during our playthrough of the game. As we made our way across the level, we came across a surfboard on this random ledge. If we jump over to it and interact with it, we can collect it. There are 4 more items like this in each level, and they're called salvage items. If we collect all 4, we get access to some bonus levels in the game. I don't think I ever got all of them during my playthrough, so I don't really know what they are, but I believe they're basic concepts like platforming, fighting, climbing, and in other areas like Bikini Bottom and stuff instead of just Volcano Island. If you collect them all, you can unlock concept art for the game as a reward, so I guess this just depends on your need to 100% this game. Also, as a side note, you might see gold versions of the collectibles. If they're gold, they give you more than just one for collecting them. That's it. At the end of the level, we get to half of a giant boat and we find Danny's friend Tucker cornered on the edge of the boat by some massive seagulls. They're ready to eat him for dinner, but we show up and we have to take them down, which we do easily. After about 25 minutes, we were able to finish Shipwreck Cliff and make our way to the next area of the game. Since we completed the level, we get another cutscene of everyone walking with the wise old crab. He tells us that we have arrived at our camp where we can set up and relax between levels. This is now the hub for this game. We can run around and collect things here, talk to other characters, and talk to whatever character needs help so we can continue the story. It's basically just an area with a waterfall, so it's not that bad. Also, it's called Camp Castaway, but before we get there, there's a couple more things to mention. At the end of each level, the game shows us how many collectible items we picked up, like how many clams, gears, feathers, etc. Then it shows us how many salvage items we got. For this first level, I got all 4 items, but it's 1 per character, so we didn't unlock anything. The second thing, while in our camp, we can check out our rewards, which allows us to travel to previous levels if we missed a salvage item, or if we want to just get more collectibles. We can check on our bonus level progress here and even how close we are to unlocking new costumes for each one of our characters. And then the last thing is that since all the characters feel the same and none of them feel like they have an advantage over another one, I chose to just play a full level with 1 character and then switch to a different character for the next level just to keep it fresh. I'm going to go much quicker through this now and just touch on gameplay, story, and boss fights because the rest of this game is all the same as the first level for the most part. So let's just continue. When we first arrive at Camp Castaway, we have to take out some little sand monsters. This will get the wise old crab to advance the story. Also, even though Tucker joined us, we can't use him in actual levels, he just builds stuff at the camp while we're away. After talking to the wise old crab, we head into the next area of the game called Calamity Cove. When we get there, we get a cutscene of a girl in a futuristic suit taking out some sand monsters. Danny notices that this is his friend Sam Manson, and she joins up with us as we tell her that we need to save the world again. Sam has a unique ability because of the suit that she has from the other dimension. If we collect enough batteries, we can use her suit and wipe out enemies. It's the same as the special meter for others, but her suit is basically invincible, so it's nice when needed to clear out a bunch of enemies quickly. As for Calamity Cove, it starts us on the beach again, making it feel much like the last level. I chose to use Patrick Star for this level, no reason besides trying out different characters at this point. This level wasn't that exciting at all. Fight sand monsters and seagulls and then move further down the beach. We did get to knock over a tree with a coconut, but that's about it for the excitement. This isn't a level that stands out for me. Once at the end of the level, we see a clarinet sticking out of the sand and someone is using it to breathe. SpongeBob and Patrick both know who it is, and they pull Squidward out of the ground, and that ends the level. There was actually 7 salvage items in this level, and we collected 6 of them, so not bad since I wasn't fully looking for them. Once we return to camp, we can talk to the wise old crab and get our next objective and the new area of the game called Fort Crab Claw. Before we enter though, Squidward is another character that hangs out at the camp, and we can't use him during the actual levels, unfortunately. Fort Crab Claw starts in the jungle, which is pretty neat since we've been on the beach this whole game so far. We need to climb our way up the cliffs nearby and get to the fort of the exiled crabs that have taken the 3-headed boy captive. I decided that I was going to use Sam for this level because I hadn't used her yet. We get new enemy types in this level with the beetle that looks like watermelon for some reason, and some frogs that spit on our characters. Once we get to the fort, we have to fight the exiled crabs, and these dudes can be pretty annoying. They like to throw their shell at us and keep us from getting close to them, and they don't take any damage unless we ground pound them so that their shell comes off. For that reason alone, that causes them to be one of the most challenging enemies in the game. One thing I didn't like about this game is that my teammates, even though they were with me, don't attack anyone. They just stand around and try to get where I am. I don't know if they're supposed to and the AI is just bad, or if this was a developer's choice, but it's annoying when I'm getting attacked by a bunch of enemies and they're just over there standing in the corner. Once we get towards the top of the fort, we find out that the three-headed boy is actually Timmy Turner, another one of the chosen ones. He has to play music to the crabs because if he stops, the crabs get mad, so we decide to rescue him. The most notable part of this encounter is that we're supposed to use these mounted guns to take out the crabs, but it's actually easier to just kick them a bunch from where they spawn. Once we take enough of them out, we get another cutscene where Timmy Turner tells us he found a Jimmy Neutron communicator and that we might be able to talk to him, but they need batteries because they're not included, and it takes a certain type of battery. Then we end the level and Timmy Turner is our next playable character in the game. I was able to get 5 of the 6 salvage items in this level. I usually just miss 1 when playing each level. I think it's like that one that might actually be off the beaten path or something, because the other ones are just sort of there and you'll see them while playing. Anyways, once we return to Camp Castaway, we run into this little crab that tells us that his village is in danger from a monster, and that the chosen ones are the only ones that can help. This leads us to the first boss fight of the game with the Great Carapace. We start by doing some short platforming, and then we get another cutscene that shows us all the crabs running away from the village, screaming about how the Carapace has come to life and is destroying the village. We also see that the wise old crab is standing up to it, and it ends up being eaten by him. It's not really a problem because he's made of sand, but we have to defeat the monster to save him. This boss fight is easy and very boring. We have 3 catapults to shoot coconuts at him. The idea is to break his armor on his back, and then push him back so he goes under the sand fall / waterfall. I can't really tell what that is. He'll try to shoot us and attack us with his fist, and he'll even cover the catapults in sand and destroy them if we let him. But if you shoot him in the face a bunch, it stuns him and he can't attack. And since you can shoot very quickly, you can just spam this and not worry about it as long as you're accurate. The hardest part is shooting the back shell off of him because it doesn't always respond to the hits. Or at least that's what it feels like. Once we break it off though and push him back, we defeat him, he becomes normal sand again, and the wise old crab is saved. For some reason, he has the battery for the communicator and gives us that for our prize for saving him. This allows the gang to call Jimmy Neutron and explain the situation. He wasn't sure what was happening but noticed the readings from his world. He wasn't teleported there because the summoning was interrupted, so he's back in Retroville instead of being there with us. He sends a blueprint to Tucker for something we can build to take down Magu. The only problem is that we need 3 parts to make it, so that's what the next 3 levels are going to be. If you were wondering, there aren't any salvage items in the boss fights, and we just head back to the camp for now. The wise old crab tells us that we only need 1 more member before the chosen ones are all back together. And then he talks about a deep sea squirrel, and then he gives us a location of where it might be. The next area is called the Crystal Runes. I decided to use Timmy Turner in this level since we used SpongeBob for the boss fight. This level has a lot of mountain terrain and more actual platforming. We also run into new enemies, which are the same enemies from before, but this time they're made of rocks or stones. They're the same monsters from the previous levels. This level is okay, and the added remains of a castle or something is a nice touch to change it up. The ooze is everywhere in this level as well, where we haven't seen much of it in the game so far. Towards the end of the level, we get a cutscene where we hear Sandy fighting some creatures and we decide that we need to help her out. I'm not sure what to call these creatures, but they remind me of like a rolling bull or something. I have no idea what they're supposed to be, but they're not too bad to take out, and we get another cutscene where we meet up with Sandy, grab an item we need for the blueprint, and then Patrick attempts to tell Sandy what is happening, but he just keeps saying jumping and jumping over and over again until Sam tells Sandy that we were brought there to save the world and the cutscene ends. As per usual, we're missing 1 salvage item out of the 6 in the level. When we get back to the camp, we find out that the Queen of the Mermacs was kidnapped and we need to save her from the Mad King. This leads to the next level called the Fetid Forest. This level is a dark and spooky forest that looks like most of it is dying or decaying from the ooze mine that is close by. I'm using Sandy for this level because she's brand new and I haven't used her yet. There is a bunch of ooze to be expected in this level, and includes some climbing, but it's pretty basic besides that in design. New enemies in this level include things like these ogre minions, gross flower bulbs, and bugs. If you haven't noticed, I had enough collectible items for Danny and SpongeBob, so now they're wearing their new costumes. SpongeBob is a pirate, and Danny has the Phantom suit, which just makes him look more bulky. I don't know if that's what it actually does. At the end of the level, we get a cutscene where the general for the Mad King is holding the queen hostage. He looks sort of like a piece of asparagus or something. I don't know how to explain him. They're all chanting, one of us, for some reason, which I found creepy, but we decide we need to act fast and have to fight them. After beating up all of his minions, the general decides to come down and fight us himself. But he's extremely weak. He blocks a lot, but using our special attacks on him a bunch and kicking him a few times with Sandy, we're able to take him out in just a matter of seconds, which saves the queen. We find out that she has one of the items we need for the blueprint, the espresso machine. That's super important, and she asks us to help her because the Mad King has built a dam that makes all the other mermacs only have access to water with the ooze inside of it, causing them to all become angry. We agree to help, and she tells us to come find her when we're ready. If you were wondering, we got all 4 salvage items in that level. Yay us. Once we're ready to help, we talk to the queen and fly off with some bug that looks like a blimp. This takes us to the next level of the game, Dry Canyon Dam, which is the second boss fight of the game. When we arrive, we get a cutscene where we find out the king is a large cabbage that turned evil and says his ruler wants everyone to consume the ooze, and if we're not going to listen, he will end us, and then we head into a fight with him. This fight is another easy one once you figure out what to do. So the idea is that he will attack you with these giant plant vines from under the ground. They're indicated by the shadows, so very easy to avoid. And once he fully comes out of the ground with one, we just have to run over to it and hit it a few times to take it out of action. Every time we take one out, the lettuce leaves protecting the head of the cabbage lower. Once all 3 vines are taken down, the leaves all fall and we can run up to them and then spam attack his face. Once we do some damage, we get these little cutscenes of the queen soldiers breaking the dam. After the first cutscene, we come back and he's back to normal, so we have to take out the vines again and repeat what we did before. But this time, he shoots these purple orbs at us that if they hit us, we get caught into a plant net. And then he can hit us a bunch of times. They're not hard to avoid if you just run left to right or right to left. Then once the vines are down, we grab a speed up power up, and then we run up there and we hit his face again, giving us 2 more cutscenes, one of them breaking the dam a little bit more, and then the last one is the dam breaking and the clean water rinsing off the ooze from the king. He comes to the surface, much smaller and normal looking, and he tells us we have to take down Magu, and he gives us a microwave. This just so happens to be the last item we need for Jimmy Neutron's blueprint, called the Rip Zipper. Once the cutscene is over, we return to the camp and can talk to Tucker now. Tucker tells us the Rip Zipper is done, and now all we have to do is take it as close to the rip in the sky as possible, or at least that's what Jimmy tells us. And then this leads us to the next level called Ancient's Peak. This level takes place towards the top by the volcano and has us going into a cave that has a bunch of ooze for most of the level. There are some neat looking areas in this section, and we have to break rocks and hit buttons to get to new areas as we move along in the cave. There are now full-on ooze monsters in this section that are like the ones that Sandy was fighting when we saved her all those levels back. I had some of the scenes during the level not work, and the ground wouldn't load, so we were fighting while floating in the air. I don't know if this was a glitch or if the area just didn't load when I moved into that section of the level. It was super strange though. We got lucky because it's just beating up enemies and not platforming, because that would have made this game extremely difficult during that part. Once we get to the top, we get another cutscene where we're ready to bring the Zip Ripper to the top, but Magu shows up and tells us that he's there for destruction or something. This takes us to the final level of the game called the Summit Storm. This level opens up with Jimmy telling the group that we can capture Magu into the Rip Zipper while they're closing up the rip in the sky. Danny comes up with a plan of splitting into 3 teams. One team is Sam, Sandy, Timmy, and Patrick, and they head up to the summit to wait for Magu. Tucker stays at the bottom of this massive tornado to turn the device on, and SpongeBob, Squidward, and Danny are going a different direction because he has a plan. We can't use Squidward unfortunately, but we start this section with Magoose spawning a bunch of enemies at us that we just have to take out. Once we take them out, Magu is about to attack us, but Timmy throws a rock at him, calls him a wiener, and he gets mad and takes off after them. This leads to us platforming our way up the stuff that is flying around in the massive tornado. This leads for some interesting sections, like climbing up a massive jukebox that is shooting discs in and out, and some buildings from some of the other worlds or something. Once we get so far, Magu comes back to fight us again, and we just have to take out more of his minions just like before. At this point, he's just screaming at us, no words, just screaming, and once we take down enough of his minions, he screams more and flies away for some reason. Then we can continue platforming upwards. Once we go through mainly just a big building with cardboard boxes trying to push us off, we come across Squidward standing on a piece of road flying in the sky, and this triggers the next cutscene. The whole idea of having Squidward with us was to use his body to slingshot ourselves higher into the tornado, closer to the rip in the sky, and once we do, we challenge Magu to meet us up there. Our objective is to get him as close as possible to the rip in the sky. This leads into the final boss fight of the game. This fight is basically the same as the fight with the Great Carapace. He ends up flying around the area, we have to jump from one gun to another and hit him. He actually attacks even if we temporarily stun him, and he'll move close to blow ooze onto us, which we can just easily jump over, and then he'll slam the ground, causing a shockwave circle to come out from his body. When he's flying around, he throws these ooze balls at us that do damage, but outside of that, this boss fight is very similar. We just need to hit him a lot, and that's it. This fight becomes even easier when you realize the crystals for health and special attack will just keep respawning, basically forever, making us untouchable. If you take too many hits, you heal up, and then just go back to fighting him. I don't like this boss fight. I think the other two are much better than this one. After shooting him enough times, it triggers a cutscene. In this one, we tell Tucker to turn on the device, we suck up Magu with the rip zipper, and we close the rip in the sky. Back at the camp, we're saying our goodbyes, and they thank us before we take a portal that will take us back to our own worlds. And as the camera pans away, we see on the back of the cliffside all the faces of the Chosen Nine. They're carved into the side of it. Then it fades out to black and the credits begin to roll. We did it! We completed Nicktoons' Battle for Volcano Island, and we can mark another game off of our list. Now it's time to decide if I would recommend this one. So would I recommend this game? This is another game that I have mixed feelings about. The game controls well, and the levels are different enough that they don't all feel the same, but the gameplay gets pretty old quickly. I think the game lacks variety for enemies, and why couldn't we use all 9 members? That seems like a weird decision. So after my time with this one, I'd probably only recommend this one for children, or if you just want to experience some Nicktoons like when you were young. But let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you want to know what game we're playing next, stick around, but if not, thanks for watching and check out the last GameCube game that we completed. That's on the screen now. If you made it this far, make sure to subscribe to the channel because it helps me out. Like and share this video so we can get more eyes on this challenge. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. We got our GameCube game list up, and on the count of 3, we're going to find out what we're playing next. So 3, 2, 1. 15, which is the Ant Bully. An action-adventure game.